Hey everyone, welcome back to Spector Creative. My name is Scott Toy Guru Neitlich, and, well, this is a Lego version of me at least. This video is an older video. It's actually one of the ones I did when I started the channel back in 2020, 2019 during the pandemic. I have no idea why I never released it. It's my thoughts on the founding of Image Comics and what it was like being a teenager. I like to do videos that I don't see other people doing, so even though I recorded this years and years ago, here it is. If the sound is off at all, or, it doesn't seem as polished as maybe some of my later videos, it's, again, because this video was made like 4 years ago. But I haven't seen anyone else do a video like this, so hey, take it away, past Scott.
20 plus years, I have been in the toy industry working on a lot of comic book related brands. And, well, what makes me a little bit unique is kind of like that whole hair club for men thing. I am both a collector and someone who has worked in the toy industry. So I kind of have some knowledge about what collectors want to hear about, which is what this channel has been about. But today, unlike toys, I'm actually going to talk about my other love, which is comic books. Usually I'm talking about action figures and how action figures are made, but today I want to do a bit of an opinion piece about comic books. And for that, we're going to travel back to 1992. Which was when I was a teenager and I was at kind of the apex of being into comic books and discovering how amazing they are. And one thing that happened in 1992 was the formation of Image Comics. Now, I'm not making this video about how Image was formed and how, these artists broke off from Marvel. There's a million YouTube videos about that. What I'm talking about is the effect this had on a young teenager. And kind of the comic book company that was promised, the comic book company that we thought we were going to get, and kind of the comic book company that broke my heart as a teenager, that didn't deliver what I thought, in my opinion, was going to happen. Now, just so you know, this is just my opinion. This is not, based on anything but the way I personally felt. So no reason to, jump out of anyone's armchairs and start telling me how wrong I am, because I'm just sharing my opinion today. Usually I share facts about toys, but today we're in opinion mode. So without that, let's take a step back. So prior to 1992, I was really into a Marvel superhero called Darkhawk. I will probably do a whole video about him because he's amazing. I was also really into Silver Surfer, specifically the Jim Lee run that started with Silver Surfer 34 that led up to the whole Infinity Gauntlet thing. Not the movie, the actual Infinity Gauntlet saga that involved this guy, Adam Warlock, who I was also really into. And yes, I was into Infinity Gauntlet because that was the conclusion to the Silver Surfer story, but a little different from how it played out on the screen. Still, that was amazing to see it on screen. I'm totally off track. All the cool kids, they were into X-Men. The cool kids were into X-Men and, of course, X-Force, which kind of started the whole Chromium age. But I was kind of into my own thing. I was like, oh, I like Darkhawk, I like Silver Surfer. I kind of have my own character. And back then, there was a magazine called Wizard. We all probably remember Wizard, and it tended to be the beacon for what was cool. The coolest characters wound up on the cover. And more, that was becoming Image Comics, was dominating the cover of Wizard because they were what was happening in the comic book industry. It really rocked it, if you will. I mean, rocked it in a foundational way when these guys, again, broke off from Marvel and formed their own company. Again, I'm not getting into the formation of Image. There's plenty of YouTube videos talking about that, but they were the top talent at Marvel that decided to go independent so they could own their own characters, and absolutely bravo for them. Now, speaking of Marvel, in the Marvel universe, I was definitely a Marvel guy when I was a teenager. That was an entire universe you could play in, and when I liked a character like Darkhawk or Silver Surfer, they had their own little territory. And it was the same with DC. You had a whole universe of characters, and each character had their own little fiefdom, their own territory, but they could meet up. No matter how obscure the character was, a good chance was they were going to meet up with Wolverine or Batman eventually. Now, outside of these two comic book universes, there were independent comics back, before Image, of course. One of the ones I was actually into was Bone, which had just come out. Some of the other independent comics, and I know there were a lot more, but this was just sort of, again, my memory from when I was a very young teenager. So there were characters like Flaming Carrot who, they just seemed a little bit more adult and a little less superhero-y. Of course, there was Dave Sim and his Anteater. I'm sorry, Aardvark, excuse me, his Aardvark. And these were just like these phone books I always saw at Barnes & Noble. And then you saw a little more mainstream was like Dark Horse, what they were doing with movie properties like Alien versus Predator. I remember them just having these beautiful painted covers that were probably, like fine art, I guess, if you will. And they started doing Star Wars comics, which was like amazing because we never had Star Wars comics. I mean, since the old Marvel ones back in the 80s. But like, wow, someone was going to do Star Wars comics? That was like, and Boba Fett was back like crazy. Yeah, that was 1991 and 92 for you. And despite all of those independent comics out there, you pretty much had two mainstream universes you could play in. You could play in the Marvel universe, or you could play in the DC universe. And as a teenager, for me, when Image came out, it represented, it basically had great expectations of being a new universe, a universe for my generation. And I know they never outrightly stated this, but the feeling that I got as a teenager was that Image Comics was basically going to be a brand new comic book universe that as a teenager I had first access to. It was like it was the 1960s and Marvel Silver Age all over again, but way cooler. And this was a universe, if you will, I could own, my generation could own. Marvel was from the 60s, DC was kind of from the 40s, at least in the mind of a teenager, and Image was now. It was for the teenagers of now, teenagers of the 90s, and this was for us, and it was a whole universe that was going to now be for us, and we had our own thing, and it was amazing. And then the really cool thing was there were those inner comic book crossovers, like when Chapel was revealed to be the one who killed Spawn. That was like, whoa, one creator's character has an effect on another. This really is this shared universe. And Wildcat starts fighting with Youngblood, and like, this is it. This is just like when Hulk showed up in Fantastic Four. Was it issue 3? I think maybe I'm getting that wrong, but it was the promise that a shared universe was being created, and one that was just for us. This was a new generation. We didn't have to just be Marvel or DC guys. We had our own shared universe where Savage Dragon could fight Shadowhawk, and wow, this was going to be amazing. And then everything kind of jumped off the cliff. And I'm not saying it went wrong because of a lack of quality or a lack of logistics. I know, when Image first came around, there were a lot of delays in books shipping, and that, but I don't know. I kind of was okay with that because, if you're going to make an omelet, if you're going to create this amazing new shared universe, I hope, you're going to break some eggs. So if some books are late, I'll put up with that. It just gives me a reason to reread the ones that are out because, this new shared universe is coming. Right. Then Todd McFarlane left Spawn. I know he came back briefly and he still did the covers, and Greg's art is amazing. I'm not knocking Greg's art. He's very talented, but he wasn't Todd McFarlane. And I was reading Spawn because Todd McFarlane was doing it. This wasn't what I signed up for, if you will. I was expecting that these artists who formed Image were going to do their books forever, like Jack Kirby or Dave Sim. And, Todd started doing his own toy company, which, again, more power to him. I love McFarlane Toys. Todd Toys became McFarlane Toys. I bought this action figure. I've bought tons of his stuff, and I love it, but this wasn't really what I signed up for, was him doing toys. I signed up for him. I thought he was going to do Spawn forever. And, Rob Liefeld was going to do Youngblood forever. And again, things started falling apart in my teenage mind. I know that there was never any of this promise that this is the way it was going to work. This is just how it felt. And I think I'm not alone. I think that other people and other teenagers, when Image first came out, also felt this way about the company and about the books. And that these promises just kind of, maybe they just in our minds, weren't being fulfilled. Shadowhawk's a great example. His whole premise was we didn't know who the superhero was, who he was under the mask. That was like the entire point of the book. And again, as a teenager, that was like, whoa, that's groundbreaking. Like, we have no idea who this character is, and like, we're going to be guessing for years and trying to figure this out. And this is going to be like, maybe I'll write my college essay about this. And then, like 4 or 5, 6 issues later, he pulled off the mask and revealed who he was, and the mystery was over. Back then, in the early 90s, mysteries like who is Cable, that was like the coolest thing as a teenager. We didn't know who Cable was, and there were all these, it was before the internet, and this was like the discussion in the playground and in junior high, and things just started falling apart. It wasn't what, I know these are my own expectations, but I think that other fans may have felt the way I did, which is why I'm making this video. Youngblood, which I thought was going to be Rob Liefeld's thing forever, just started, they started pumping out book after book after book, and it wasn't Rob doing the art anymore. And, Cyberforce was amazing. Mark's art was at like the top, and I don't know, Cyberforce just kind of like disappeared. Like, after a couple issues, after the miniseries, it just sort of, like, vanished. Jim Lee sold Wildcats to DC, and, he's got every right to do that, of course. But as a kid, not as the industry professional I am now, but as a kid, the idea that Rob Liefeld can, no longer make Youngblood, and Jim Lee sold off to DC, and it wasn't what was promised. I thought we were going to get all these characters in this brand new universe and these artists dedicated to their creations. Again, what I thought what this was. They have every right to sell off the characters that they want to, or to go off and do action figures or make movies or do whatever they want. But for me, as a teenager, a young teenager, when I found out that Chapel killed Spawn, to me, that was like, whoa, this is the start of a shared universe. This really is what I hoped it would be. And this is sort of, this backs up that thought. This is really happening. The only comic that really did that was Savage Dragon. Savage Dragon, Eric Larson's book, I mean, he's still drawing it. He's almost at, 250 issues. And this is, April of 2020 when I'm recording this. And he kind of did create a shared universe. Unlike everyone else, in Savage Dragon, he created so many characters that it almost had a Marvel universe into itself. And that's one of the reasons I'm a big fan of Dragon. I did a whole video about that. Image Comics, did do amazing things for independent, artists and writers. And it should be praised for all that. But as a teenager, my expectations were a little different. I expected these artists were going to stick to their books and we were going to get these forever. Maybe you felt this way too. Let me know in the comments. Was Image Comics a big part of you being a teenager? Did you feel like Image Comics succeeded in what you thought it was going to be? It's still an amazing company and they're pumping out a lot of great titles. But it kind of broke my heart. I was really hoping that I was going to be on board for this brand new universe of comic book characters. And, this was for our generation, this new generation. And in today's world, with everything we're going through right now, and again, it's April 2020 when I'm recording this, and a lot of us are at home watching YouTube videos, I don't know, maybe promises are more important than ever because we really only have each other. So, to me, growing up, when you make a promise, that's kind of everything. So let me know if you felt the same way. Is this just me that thought this, or are there other people that, were Image comic fans from day one that were really hoping for this? And if you like what I have to say and you want me to get back to actual factual-based content, subscribe to this channel. I've got a lot more toy videos and maybe some more opinions about comic books to post up. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I'll see you around the internet.